building a hot rod from scratch.
All right, guys, we're rolling in the car back from the paint booth. We're gonna put it on the lift, get the SpeedTech subframe all buttoned up, get it up underneath the car.
There's a lot of measuring that obviously comes hand in hand with putting a whole entire front cradle system like that in. You really want to X out the whole entire front suspension. We'll end up putting the rear end in the vehicle because essentially you want to line up your rear end to the front.
We got the front subframe under. Time to work on the rear. I'm gonna roll the Dutchman in and get that bolted up.
As we install the rear end, we're going to center it in between the tubs to make sure that we have the proper tire clearance. Utilizing the tram gauge, essentially, it gets you a very, very pinpoint measurement. Certain points in the body will have manufacturer holes for alignment. So you can set your tram gauge up in there, X out the body, and then that'll tell you if you're square to the body. So right now we're just really assembling it and making sure everything's torqued down and installed properly. After a few drives, what will end up happening is your springs will start to sag. So realistically, pan hard bar in the rear end kind of determines where that axle sits in space, and it also keeps it centered. So if your ride height drops, that can also shift. So it's pretty imperative that we keep our coils adjusted and adjust for that actual drop.
We've probably had it together and inside multiple times just to get everything mocked up and lined up where it's supposed to be. So it should be pretty darn close to where everything needs to be.
It can be very difficult to install the seals if the doors are on. So we generally always put the seals on off the vehicle prior to the final assembly. The process is you take weather strip adhesive, you put a nice bead on your actual rubber, you put a nice bead on the door, you let it air dry, and then you mate the two together, and you'll end up ripping the foam before that actual glue will break up. So fit and finish is probably one of the more tedious things, to say the least. The smallest adjustment will make the biggest change on the other side of the door. What I like to do is intentionally don't put in either the latch or the catch, because you don't want anything manipulating where that door is going to sit. And you want to be able to make sure that you have your perfect gap without any stress on that panel. And then from there you can install, your catch and go from there. The main thing is looking for an even gap all around. You don't want to walk up to a car and see a giant gap in the front and it buried to the quarter panel in the back. You want nice, even, crisp lines. We've had this deck lid on and off multiple times. We know that it'll fit the hole, essentially. So at this point in time, what we're doing is just making sure that all of our stripes line up. So you want to make sure that it actually fits and you have your perfect gaps without anything being able to depict where it's going to go. You always have minor tweaks and little things that you have to do to make sure.
Yeah, it's time consuming, so.
Yep. The biggest thing is making sure that it functions. You can't just throw everything together and expect it to work. You actually have to do functional tests and open it and close it 100 times and make sure that, a year down the road it's going to work as it should. There we're just putting in a license plate light and installing the flush mounted bumper. The actual bumper brackets are welded to the inside of the bumper. When you do weld the bumper brackets to the inside of the bumper on final assembly, you just want to be sure that you don't over tighten anything because it might dimple it, or in this case, you could damage the paint, something like that. When we run our fuel lines, we prefer to keep them on the inside of the frame rail, away from any kind of electrical contact. Power wire, cable, anything like that. Depending on the powertrain, that's going to be dependent on what size fuel lines you're running, the diameter and everything else. And on a custom build like this, we just make everything ourselves. Because if you're running an LS3, the factory Camaro might be, a 1/4 inch too small. And then you're just starving your motor. So you have your vintage air system on the inside. We set up the panel through on the inside of the fender. We wanted it to look as clean as possible.
So once we got the vintage air system all mocked up, time to make the lines for it. Then going from there with the lines, kind of same thing, running it inside the fender well, keep it clean.
Running heater core lines is a little bit easier than AC lines because AC's got a much higher PSI range, so they're a little bit more difficult. We use hydraulic crimp and make all our own ends.
So the air raid cold air intake didn't come with a MAF sensor, no mounting hardware for it, so Terry's making some mounting hardware and positioning the MAF sensor.
We're going to color match the intake to the body of the car. First assembly in a brake system, you got to purge all the air out, which can take some time, and always want to bleed from the top. You also want to bench bleed the master cylinder prior to the install. Otherwise, you'll actually never get all of the air. You'll kind of just keep pushing it back and
pushing air,
forth,
which is not good. You'll be chasing yourself on bleeding the whole time. So.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different way of doing things. You know, if you're OCD, that's a huge, huge thing. Making it look neat and, you know, have everything going as clean as you can. I mean, it's a process.
The only other thing is leaving yourself a little bit of leash.
Yeah, you don't want to be super tight pulling on anything, you know, where the a plug will go and, you know, you're stretching those wires out to plug in. Yeah. Never good.
Especially just depending on the situation, you know, you're going into doors, you need a little bit of throw. There's still going to be movement in that line. You don't want to be too tight to where, you know, now you're disconnecting pigtails just because you closed the door. Prior to the initial startup, you want to make sure that you have all your fluids in, you ran your electric right.
Double check everything, go through the whole process, you know.
Make sure it has gas in it.
Yep, make sure it has gas in it. Yeah, just be cautious, fire extinguisher nearby, and, you know, have other eyes watching. It's definitely a good thing to have. Make sure there's nothing leaking underneath. Yep. If you're inside, you can't see, so 2 eyes are better than one. Calibrating the Dakota digital gauges upon first startup, that shows, you know, your temps and everything, so there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve there. Getting your miles per hour, you really can't do that until you're out driving it, you know. Yep. That takes a little bit longer, but to get voltage, tach, you know, the basic stuff, a little bit of programming there, but super easy.
So what we're doing here is we're back taping for interior paint. Got to take a little bit more time, make sure that we obviously don't get any overspray on the beautiful paint job, and then also we do it all at the same time so we can get a guaranteed color match all throughout the car.
So just the first quick test drive, going over everything to check your basics, make sure there's no leaks, no bangs. You know, you're gonna hear stuff, you're gonna smell stuff. Everything's brand new, it's never been used before, so just giving a quick little shakedown to make sure brakes work, steering works. It's just the whole 9 yards. Test drove that thing during this process for what, 300 miles in total before we handed it off to Craig. So, you know, and all this wasn't like the final first test drive, final test drive. You know, this was the start of a long process of shaking everything down. You know, the first start of the motor itself is cool, but, you know, getting what that car is going to sound like forever, you know, it's a good feeling.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
Went over to Tony's shop to get the exhaust final installed. It was the hooker exhaust, and he just heat wrapped everything.
Used the heat wrap to keep the bottom of the car from getting too hot and whatnot. Made sure it tucked real nice and did a very, very good job. Some
final adjustments, I think, were there too on the hood. Just once again, after driving, I feel like probably what you were saying before, after driving and bouncing around everything is gonna shimmy a little bit, just like we were talking about with suspension. So going over everything one more time just to make sure everything is tight and in line and in the right spot.
So Unique Upholstery did a wonderful job with the fit and finish of the TMI interior. They also had to make a couple of modifications, one shrinking down the rear seat due to the tubs, and yeah, they did a fantastic job.
Well, our 1969 Camaro that we've been building is back from the upholstery shop. So they did a Great job at Unique on the interior. We're still tweaking a few things going through the car, driving it, testing things. But it's really come a long way since the last time we checked in. It runs, it drives. Now it's down to just running through the last few things. Wiring, making sure that the power steering, the hydro boost, everything's working right in sync. Yeah, very pleased with the way it looks. The custom interior, the custom console these guys built. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, car's coming together. Stay tuned. We'll take it out and drive it next.
Well, he's seen it done, so now he's chomping at the bit to drive it. So me and you still got to put a couple more miles on it, once again, to give our approval on it, our safety.
Make sure we work out all the gremlins.
Yep,
you know?
and then let him
the
take it.
last thing that we want is, you know, that man to be stranded on the side of the road.
Yeah, and anything to happen to him is not good. So,
Yep.
But he's ready. So
getting close.
Yep.